Hello, welcome back to Womiba Finance channel. My name is Onyinye, and today I'll be telling you everything you need to know about Canadian Startup Visa Program, which is popularly called Canadian SUV Program. Okay, why am I telling you this today? I'm telling you this because it's alternative to express entry. That there's not any point to be counted for you. There's no any immigration regulation checking up on you or trying to limit you or trying to program how your life will be in Canada. So now, why am I telling you this? What are the benefits? The benefits are many. The benefits cannot be compared to any visa program Canadian authority might have for foreign migrants from Africa or Asia or third world Asian countries. Okay, have you not seen that most of the jobs you do, like care work, nursing, Chinese are not big in that? Chinese population is more than African population. But if you go through all this menial job you are doing, the best way Chinese migrate to all these foreign country and refuse to be under the control of their host country immigration is through anything startup. And I want our African brothers and sisters to explore these things, because all the immigration, foreign immigration authorities are coming hard trying to regulate how Africans live their life in their host countries, which is not good. Okay, by this video now, let's hear this video out.
We're live, our economic recovery series, and we are happy to be joined by another special guest. It's not an in-person event, but we're very delighted to welcome Honorable Minister Sean Fraser to our series event today. So welcome. Before we begin, the Chamber would like to recognize that the land upon which we gather is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. They have occupied this island for over 12,000 years. We honor the treaties of peace and friendship, which recognize Mi'kmaq title and established an ongoing relationship between nations. We are all treaty peoples. Again, we are joined today by the Honorable Sean Fraser, who is now the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. And we will have a chance to hear from him relating to both obviously labor issues and immigration and the topic of economic recovery. By way of background and introduction, Minister Fraser was first elected to Parliament in 2015 in the riding of Central Nova, meaning he is a proud Atlantic Canadian. He was re-elected in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections, and on October 26, 2021, he was appointed as our Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. He is a friend of the Chamber. We did host him last spring for a federal budget briefing while he was serving in his role as Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Finance and to the Minister of Middle Class Prosperity and Associate Minister of Finance. Minister Fraser grew up in Pictou County and has his family throughout the town and county of Antigonish. He enjoys spending time in Central Nova with his wife, Sarah, and their children, Molly and Jack. We welcome you, Minister Fraser. Again, I thank you for taking the time to be here virtually with us. And I would welcome you now and ask that you perhaps provide some opening remarks.
Sure. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you at the Chamber again, here in a different context, but still focused on the importance of the Atlantic Canadian economy. I actually had the opportunity to connect with your Premier this morning to discuss some of the same issues that we're going to get into today. But let me just say that how important it is to come at the issue of immigration and economic growth from an Atlantic Canadian perspective. When I found out during my meeting with the Prime Minister which position I was going to be given, one of the things he drew into focus for me was the fact that it was not a coincidence that he appointed an immigration minister from a small community in Atlantic Canada. We've had successive immigration ministers from Toronto where they're having now bigger challenges around housing and municipal services. And we're hearing from businesses right across the country in communities, small and large, regions, east and west, saying the path forward is going to involve getting more people to work in our businesses. And for that reason, the Prime Minister has asked me to serve in this particular capacity, given where I come from and my appetite to continue to grow Canada. From my perspective, I've seen firsthand the benefits of immigration in Atlantic Canada since the moment I was elected as a member of Parliament, whether it's from an economic point of view, a demographic point of view, or a social point of view. When I look at the numbers, and I do from my time in the finance department, really focus very closely on numbers relating to jobs and growth. When I saw the February job numbers come out across Canada with 337,000 new jobs added in 1 month, and now a lot of that was people who were reopening after the Omicron variant, but just to put it into perspective, how significant our economic recovery has been to date, we have seen 112% of the jobs that were lost during the pandemic now recovered. We are seeing GDP at a greater level today than it was before the pandemic. Our labor force participation rate is not just the highest it's been since the beginning of the pandemic, but the highest it's been since we started keeping track of those statistics in 1976. This is all great news. That said, when the Omicron variant hit us at the end of the year, there was 900,000 plus job vacancies across Canada. If you walk down the main drag in any community, large or small, if your communities are anything like mine, there's a lot of help wanted signs in the window. One of the things that we can do is embrace immigration as a growth strategy. So we can turn that 112% jobs number into a much larger figure and actually put Atlantic Canada on a stronger path towards an economic recovery than it would have been had this pandemic not happened. Now, I don't mean to suggest that I'm glad that the pandemic has done such harm to our community, both from an economic and a public health point of view. But given the position that we're in now, there are certain opportunities if we focus on adopting smart policies that will actually help us grow businesses. And it's really important that we think of immigration not just as an opportunity to create jobs for the newcomers that come here, but opportunities to sustain jobs that have been here for generations. If I think about industries like and I'm just on the other side of the ferry, by the way, we share the same fishing grounds. If we didn't have workers coming to work in seafood processing, we wouldn't have buyers that had the capacity to take product from our fishermen. The reality is we have opportunities for kids who grew up in the area to become adults who raise their own families there, because we have newcomers who are sustaining the businesses that they rely on across the supply chain. What we're seeing right now in Atlantic Canada is so encouraging, because we're seeing a lot of people start to move in, not just from third countries, but from all across the country as well, particularly during this pandemic, which I think creates extraordinary opportunities for our region going forward. I mentioned just in the very opening portion of my remarks that it's not just economic factors, but demographic factors we need to be concerned with. I think back to when I was first elected, and in that 2015 campaign, there was a couple of hot issues that were very local in nature, but I expect typical for communities like mine. We had an elementary school closed down, and our largest regional hospital lost access to its mental health unit. There was a lot of for sale signs on homes around Pictou County. And my own family I had moved home recently from working out west. A couple sisters moved to Ontario. Another moved to New Brunswick. Another had her husband working internationally. Well, she took time off from teaching to help raise the kids. And my youngest sister, I got 5 sisters, there's quite a few of us. The youngest one had to move to the city to work as an accountant. Most of us are back home now. And there's been opportunities open up for us to move back home. Part of this is driven by the fact that when people move into a community, opportunities tend to multiply. The conversations that I have now are more along the lines of whether we can build houses quickly enough to accommodate all the people who are moving into town. That creates its own challenges, but I can tell you, as a local elected official, and as somebody who just grew up in this community and cares deeply about it, it's a much better challenge to have the problem of needing to build houses because so many people are moving in than losing schools and hospitals because so many people are leaving. Immigration is going to help cure the demographic trend that we're seeing cause those loss in services. If I go back to the 1970s, there was 7 workers for every retiree. Today, there's about 3. If I go forward a few years, by the time I'm ready to retire, there's only going to be 2 on our current trajectory. We can't take for granted that we will have access to publicly funded healthcare and education and water and wastewater services or public transit or anything else that's financed through public taxpayers' dollars. If we want to rely on these services that make our communities destinations that people want to come and live in, we have to continue to welcome people here so we can have that revenue base to provide the many services that we too often take for granted. Of course, immigration as well has a significant social component because it makes our communities more vibrant and dynamic places to live. But it's one thing for me to tell you that I believe in immigration. It's another thing to say we're doing something about it. You may have noticed over the last couple of years, our target level for resettlement of permanent residents is trending upwards. That's a pattern you should expect to see to continue because we believe that immigration as a government is good for our communities. I tabled the immigration levels plan for this year just a couple of weeks back in the House of Commons, and it's the most ambitious immigration levels plan ever tabled in the history of Canada that plans to resettle 432,000 new permanent residents this year. We broke the record last year with 405,000. We're going to continue to try to set a new pace year over year because we believe it's good for our country and good for our economy. There's also programs that we're working along the lines of our temporary employment programs to help make it easier for businesses to get access to talent more quickly and get them on payroll now to solve gaps in the labor force. And I know it's challenging because the pandemic has really impacted the operations of our department, both from an operational capacity when the public health situation shuts offices down and we can't have people work from home, but also in the context of having to have pivoted last year to resettle more people who were already in Canada when applications were still coming up from other countries. And we did that to prevent the spread of COVID-19 at a time when our borders were closed. And now that the world's opening back up, of course, we have a few years worth of applications from all over the world of people trying to get here. So we're putting a lot of more resources into processing. We've hired more than 500 new staff. We've got an additional $85 million that's going to be targeting primarily temporary programs, work permits, study permits, temporary visas, proof of citizenship, and permanent residency cards in particular. And we do expect that this is going to help get us back on track across those lines of businesses over time. Some regional programs of interest. The Atlantic Immigration Program obviously was made permanent as of March 6th, just a couple of weeks ago, and lots coming down the pipe that are going to make it easier to hire and retain talent as well. I don't want this to be a one-way conversation, but I do have one more point that I want to finish on. The situation in Ukraine is one that has captivated the hearts and minds of Canadians and I think right-thinking people right across the world. We've made many contributions in terms of sanctions on Russian officials, military aid, humanitarian aid, financial support for Ukraine, and other measures. But for my part, the immigration response is going to be an important component that's going to welcome people here to provide safe haven. We've now seen since January 1st, more than 10,000 Ukrainians have arrived in Canada. There's nearly that many again that applied before the new system came online Thursday that are waiting for their expedited application. But on the new platform that was released between Thursday and Sunday, almost an additional 20,000 people have applied under the new expedited system. All of the people who apply are eligible for open work permits. I'm relieved to have heard this morning that more than 80% of those who have applied have also applied for the open work permit, which communicates to me there will be a significant chunk of people coming who will be wanting to work for Canadian businesses. I do know that there's serious concerns about the impact of these measures on existing processing for people who've been in the queue and are waiting to come here. I want to reassure you that although there can be a short-term impact when you try to pivot resources to deal with emergencies, we're not pulling resources from other groups on a permanent basis. The Prime Minister has announced publicly a contribution of $117 million so we can actually back up the commitments we've made with new resources that we're pulling online. In the immediate term, there may be some people, and in fact, we're borrowing staff from other government departments to make sure that we're maximizing our productivity without compromising to the extent possible other lines of business. We're doing everything we can, not just to process large numbers of Ukrainians who would like to come to Canada, but to also preserve the ability of the system to respond to the already monumental demands it's facing. It's not an easy challenge, but it's very much a challenge worth taking on. So to the extent that we do see a bit of an impact on some of these short-lived challenges, I do expect that they're going to remain temporary in nature, and that we're going to be able to overcome them as we deploy these additional resources, both the $117 million I mentioned, but also the previous investments I referred to from the economic and fiscal update of $85 million, which is going to go to the very same kinds of processing capacities that we're dealing with the situation in Ukraine. Barb, if it's okay with you, I'll leave my comments there. I find the real value in these exchanges are often more in the questions than in the lecture at the beginning. But let me just say I'm very grateful to be with you here again today. Looking forward to many more conversations.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And you did address, I know, a concern that some of our members have shared, in that they also share that immigration is a key to our prosperity, and just having the process in place that will allow those who are wanting to come to this area and work for our business owners is something that's very important to them. They appreciate the new stream that started as a pilot and has now come into effect, and are just wanting to see it work in the most efficient way possible so that everyone can benefit. So thank you for your comments on that. You know that we are now climbing out of the pandemic, but we certainly hope that we are, and everyone is very eager to get things back on track. It has had an impact on employers, on employees, customers, trades, pretty much everyone in our local community. And so we're ready to move on. Our members recognize that the federal government has been there for the business community throughout the pandemic, and we're very appreciative of that, as are our members. But we're now transitioning out of the pandemic and looking towards getting to a place where work can be done to ensure there is continued economic growth in this region. We recognize the previous role, and we certainly feel that your role as Canada's immigration minister will be an important lever in our country's recovery and our growth through growth of our population and welcoming newcomers to this area, whether through helping fill workplace shortages, adding to Canada's diversity and culture, or providing a safe refuge for immigrants looking for a new start, as we've all seen what harsh realities are happening in the Ukraine. It all adds to our population growth. And as I said, we agree that it is a key element to our recovery. You did allow us to ask you some questions today, so thank you very much for that. Let's get started with the first question. 2021 and the early months of 2022 have continued to be challenging for many islanders, Canadians, and businesses alike. Restrictions changed, case numbers peaked again. There was a lot of stopping and starting, and that did cause some frustration. As we look towards transitioning out of the pandemic, where do you think Atlantic Canada's economy stands in terms of economic recovery when comparing it to the rest of the country?
Look, a great question, and it's one that I think is important to understand where we stand relative to the rest of the country. The answer is very well compared to historically where we stand. I am so excited about the economic potential of Atlantic Canada on the heels of this pandemic. But to put it into perspective, I'm not just excited about how Atlantic Canada is positioned relative to the rest of the country. I'm equally excited about how well positioned Canada is relative to developed economies across the world. So we're already, in my mind, one of the bright shining stars of the economic recovery from COVID-19. But within that bright shining star, Atlantic Canada is shining brighter than perhaps it ever has before. So a couple of points just to sort of back up that position. When I look at Canada across developed economies, we're not only leading the pack when it comes to the jobs recovery, we're also leading the pack when it comes to our fiscal position after a really, really challenging few years. Our strategy at the time was to do everything we can to keep households and businesses afloat so they're still here to contribute to the economic recovery. And despite some obvious exceptions in different sectors that have been hit hard, largely speaking, the strategy worked. We prevented a lot of the economic scarring that would have resulted had we let more businesses fail in hopes that someone else would fill in those gaps in the economy. So I think we can safely say that some of the emergency programs like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Emergency Business Account have saved main streets and industrial bases right across the country. But one of the trends that I was watching but wasn't necessarily expecting to be as successful as it has been is the movement of people to Atlantic Canada. We have seen one of the fastest rates of population growth, certainly in my lifetime, and well beyond that. Over the course of the past few years. Anecdotally, you will have all heard of people who just picked up from an Ontario town or city and have bought homes sight unseen and said, I'm moving to Atlantic Canada. Maybe it's people who retired early, maybe it's people who can do remote work. But let's not forget that people drive economies. When people show up, whether they grow the market of people who are shopping for groceries and pillowcases and toothbrush, whether they're buying or building a home, or whether they are joining the payroll of a company that's been doing business in Atlantic Canada, we are seeing an explosion in population, and not just compared to our historical average, but compared to what has historically been the fastest growing regions of Canada. It's the first time in a very long time, I believe in my lifetime, that Atlantic Canada is growing faster than Western Canada. This presents a remarkable opportunity for us to really jump out of this pandemic recession. I've met people in my own community who have moved here from New York City, from tech jobs for Google, who bought a place near the beach in Caribou because they have an ability to buy a home at a reasonable price and enjoy what feels like a private beach, even though they're all public beaches. It's the quality of life that we've been able to offer, and we put ourselves on the map by managing the public health situation effectively. And it caused a lot of people to say, oh, geez, have you heard of these places like PEI or Nova Scotia, where we might want to actually move and live and work? And it's really making an enormous difference today. When we have this influx of people, the economy is going to grow. But when you start to see growth like that, the thing that I find most exciting is growth breeds growth. When you start down this path of population growth and economic growth, it creates further opportunities to have that cycle be perpetuated. So in terms of your question, Atlantic Canada stands out as a huge growth potential region in Canada, but within across the global economy, Canada stands out as one of the potential high growth regions coming out of this pandemic as well.
So because so many folks are coming, we have to be able to service them and meet their needs so that we can retain them. We've already spoken briefly about the workforce shortages that exist. They are a major challenge for our members, as they are for others in other parts of the country. And it's especially important for us right now as the tourism season is approaching. We're expecting a huge tourism season, and we want to be able to meet the demand. We have seen significant shortages in other key sectors as well, like construction, but they are present in all industries. And without workers, we are unable to fill urgent roles, impeding growth and development, whether that is tackling the housing crisis that exists or providing the frontline healthcare services workers. We do believe that these shortages are an area that requires an all hands on deck approach from all levels of government and private sector. As the Minister of Immigration, what is your department actively working on to help bring qualified newcomers to the region to address the shortages? And I know that you did speak briefly about some of those initiatives in your opening remarks, but is there anything further that you would like to share on that particular question?
Yeah, let me be a little more explicit in some of the concrete measures that we have either implemented already or are looking at implementing. So first and foremost, we can't bring more people to our region if we're not bringing more people to Canada overall. So I mentioned that we're growing the immigration levels plan, and that's the framework through which a lot of the growth that we're going to see is going to take place. More specific to our region, I think there's huge opportunities with the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. That program has not just been made permanent, but the target numbers are set to grow over the next few years. What's more exciting than the target number for me is we've created a lot of flexibility with the Atlantic Immigration Program to have the range extended well above what the target is. So if we see that there's increased demand from Atlantic Canadian provinces to use the program, that will give us the space that we need to actually double or potentially triple the size of the program in the next few years alone, if we see the appetite from employers is there. But we're not a one-trick pony when it comes to these programs. Still on the permanent residency side, and I'll get to temporary changes in a moment as well, there's a massive opportunity that we have to push people towards the region through the provincial nominee program and through the express entry system. You should expect to see continued growth so long as jurisdictions can meet the increasing target year over year. I'm willing to keep increasing those numbers. But on the express entry piece, one of the things people probably didn't notice because it was a small hook in a previous federal budget, flexibility baked into that system that could be attributed to whoever sits in the chair I currently occupy, has the potential to allow tailored responses that meet the needs of specific regions and specific job opportunities within those regions. I would love to see, and our express entry system is beautiful in a lot of ways because it allows us to tap into the best and brightest minds around the world. But sometimes the rigidity of the scoring system will put someone very well educated, but in an area that's not in demand, above someone who may not have as high a formal education, but has the exact skills that we need in our community. If we actually build more flexibility into the express entry system, it will enable me or whoever may succeed me in this position to say, if PEI is looking for healthcare workers, let's find a way to pull applications for healthcare workers from who are planning on moving to PEI out of the system. And if we do that in larger numbers, we'll be able to satisfy the local demand that PEI may have, which could be distinct from the need for more manufacturing workers in Southern Ontario. Now, it's perhaps a bad example because healthcare workers are needed right across the country, but I think you'll take the point. Those are a few things on the permanent side. On the temporary side, I'm still of the view that we are living through an economic crisis. Despite the fact that our recovery has been amongst the strongest in the world, it's a crisis to me because we haven't maximized our potential. If we're going to maximize our potential, we need to get as many people here to fill jobs in the workforce as possible, as quickly as possible. In addition to having the Ukrainian effort be tied to open work permits, there's a number of reforms I'm considering right now that may allow businesses to use more international students for the workforce, that may allow them to more easily tap into a greater number of temporary foreign workers, that are going to potentially expedite the work permit issuance for people who are coming, that may reduce the administrative barriers for LMIAs. What we're doing within our department right now in collaboration with Employment and Social Development Canada is to go through all of the programs that we have that can get a worker to a business, figuring out what elements we can rip off the programs to make sure that we're getting people here in the quickest way possible, in a manner that doesn't oust Canadians from having those job opportunities, and in a manner that doesn't suppress wages for Canadian workers. To the extent that we can preserve those two important integrity pieces and still grow the access to this global pool of talent that's on the move, we need to do it, because if we miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have people come here, we'll miss out on the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to grow our economy. So that's my mindset, and those are some of the different areas where we're looking at making changes in the short term.
Well, we will look forward to reviewing those changes. Now, that sounds wonderful.
Hello, guys. Welcome back. The Zoom video you viewed was that of Sean Fraser, who is the current Minister of Housing in Canada. By that time he did this that Zoom with the business leader, I think her name, I've forgotten her name. By that time he did that Zoom, look at the way he was praising immigration. Look at the way he was praising migrants, foreign migrants that will come to their country and work and help them grow economy. I don't even know that Canadian authority, they spent almost 800 million and employed 500 immigration staff. This was when he was the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship of Canada. That is IRCC. That was when he was Minister of IRCC. He was saying all those sort of things, how immigration, how they need people, how, I told you people that immigration is dynamic. And once a government is going towards election, oh my God, just prepare for the huge changes. We are witnessing it in UK. They are trying to stop everything because the Prime Minister promised the voters, stopping illegal immigrants, the kind of play the Immigration Authority, the kind of game they know how to play. They play into the hands and the minds of the electorate. So now, Sean Fraser just wake up. Now he is the current Canadian minister. Just yesterday, on Tuesday, he went to Charlottetown to say that they are proposing to the parliament to cap international student visa. This is where we are, and you can listen to him here. I'm not the one, I'm just playing the video for you. I'm not the one saying it. It's still the same person. It's still Mr. Sean Fraser, the current Minister of Housing. So by 2024, there will be a cap, because this thing will be, will be done because they want votes. You know what I mean? Once a politician is going towards an election, he wants to tell the electorate that he's doing something about their complaint and all that. So let's listen to him once again to tell you what he said on Tuesday. This is him on Tuesday telling us that they will put a cap in international student visa because of the housing crisis. This is a man that spent 800 million just after the COVID. Immediately after the COVID, to recruit people, open the direct entry and all that. Now, the same person as a Minister of Housing is trying to put a cap. So, you watch it with me. Okay, let's watch the video now.
The International Student Program is extraordinary. It serves Canada's interests. It contributes tens of billions of dollars to our GDP. And it provides a pipeline of young and talented people who will be Canadian one day. But what we've seen is certain private colleges in particular who I think are abusing the program, who are bringing people in, who are not supporting them, who are not providing housing options near where their places of study exist, if they're providing them at all. The people who come need to be better supported, but we do have to manage the growth when it comes to the student program more effectively than even immigration problems more generally, because what we see is people arrive in concentrated communities that have a unique localized impact, and I think local residents in those communities deserve to see from different levels of government that we're live to the issue and want to make sure we don't overwhelm those communities, but can welcome people who will generate population growth, economic growth, and make the community a more vibrant place to live.
Am I to interpret that a cap is coming?
Look, that's not a decision that has been taken. I think there's conversations I've had on a range of different options with Minister Miller. There's some work that we were looking at, how to better partner with institutions while I was still in the immigration portfolio. But I don't think we should be afraid to talk openly about the different options that we ought to consider. I think Canadians who are struggling to see themselves in the housing market, to see a future for themselves in our community, they deserve to know that we're looking under every stone for the solutions that exist, both on the supply and demand side of the equation.
In the next video coming, please, I will make sure that you have to know the requirements for SUV. So you check out the next video that is coming after this one. Now you know everything. I'm not the one saying it. I don't want to repeat what this man is saying at different times in different offices. So you know now that in 2024, you will have a changes. You have cap. This is the proposal now. And will they carry it out? Of course, they are going towards an election. So they want electorate votes. So they have to do their own bidding, to be able to get some votes. These politicians for you. Okay, thank you so much. At the end of this video, I want you to subscribe. I want you to tell your family and friends about this channel. I want you to make sure that you share in your social media platforms, and don't forget to leave your notification button on for this channel, because I'll be bringing everything you need. to know about the location, how to settle down, how to make money as an immigrant, and how to make sure that you get your citizenship. Of course, you need that citizenship to secure your stay, because somebody might tell you to pack your bag one day, and you know, you can see the politician, they play politics with immigration. So be careful, be watchful, put your ears on the ground, please. And this is the end of this video. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share, don't forget to comment, don't forget to give us thumbs nail to wake up our algorithm. Thank you so much, and bye bye from me. Bye. Have a very good day. Bye.